Hi boys and girls. I thought today maybe we could talk about springtime. Have you noticed that the weather is starting to get warmer and the sun is out more often and there's no snow or hardly any snow at all left? That means that it's spring. When winter time is over, then springtime begins. And there's lots of ways that we can realize that spring has started. It's called looking for the signs of spring. Would you like to go outside and help me find some signs of spring? Here's a sign of spring, boys and girls. Can you see these? They're called buds, and they come on the trees in the springtime, and when it gets warmer, they'll turn into leaves. Maybe we'll find some that have leaves on them. Here's some more buds. Do you see how they're starting to turn into tiny green leaves? Soon they'll get bigger and bigger. Here's a sign of spring. It's a bird's nest. Can you see it? In the spring, the birds start to make nests so that they can lay their eggs, and then there'll be baby birds. Here's some leaves that are poking out of the ground. You can see them. And they're going to have flowers on them soon. Here's a crocus. This is a little flower. It's one of the first flowers we see in the springtime. New green grass is a sign of spring. Do you see how this is very green? This is last year's grass. It's not green anymore, but when you start to see the green grass again, that's a sign of spring. There's another sign of spring that we can't see with our eyes. We have to listen and hear it with our ears. Listen, can you hear it? Do you hear the birds? The birds start their beautiful songs in the spring. Wow, we found lots of signs of spring when we were outside, didn't we? Some of the signs of spring that we found were on the trees. Do you remember? There was the buds, and there were the buds that were turning into little leaves. That makes me think that maybe there's something in the story bag about trees. Let's look. There's a book. It's called A Tree is a Plant. A Tree is a Plant by Clyde Robert Bulla, illustrated by Stacy Shewitt. That means that she drew the pictures. A tree is a plant. A tree is a plant. A tree is the biggest plant that grows. Most kinds of trees grow from seeds, the way most small plants do. There are many kinds of trees. Here are a few of them. How many do you know? Maple, conifer, persimmon, palm, willow, lemon. This tree grows in the country. It might grow in your yard too. Do you know what kind of tree it is? This is an apple tree. This apple tree came from a seed. The seed was small. It grew inside an apple. Have you ever seen an apple seed? Ask an adult to help you cut an apple in two. The seeds are in the center. They look like this. Most apple trees come from seeds that are planted. Sometimes an apple grows from a seed that falls to the ground. The wind blows leaves over the seed. The wind blows soil over the seed. All winter, the seed lies under the leaves and the soil. All winter, the seed lies under the ice and snow and is pushed into the ground. Spring comes. Rain falls. The sun comes out and warms the earth. The seed begins to grow. At first, the young plant does not look like a tree. The tree is very small. It is only a stem with 2 leaves. It has no apples on it. A tree must grow up before it has apples on it. Each year the tree grows. It grows tall. In 7 years, it's so tall that you can stand under its branches. In the spring, there are blossoms on the tree. Spring is apple blossom time. The blossoms last only a few days. Then they fall to the ground. Now there are green leaves on the tree. Among the leaves there are small apples. The apples are where the blossoms were before. The apples are green, and they're almost too small for you to see. The apples grow slowly. They grow all during the spring and the summer. In the fall, they are large and ripe. They are ready to eat. We can see the apples and the leaves on the branches. We can see the branches growing out of the trunk. We can see the trunk growing out of the ground. We can see the bark of the tree. The bark covers the branches and the trunk like a coat. But there is a part of the tree we cannot see. We cannot see the roots. They are under the ground. Some of the roots are large. Some of them are as small as hairs. The roots grow like branches under the ground. A tree could not live without roots. Roots hold the trunk in the ground. Roots keep the tree from falling when the wind blows. Roots keep the rain from washing the tree out of the ground. Roots do something more. They take water from the ground. They carry the water into the trunk of the tree. The trunk carries the water to the branches. The branches carry the water to the leaves. Hundreds and hundreds of leaves grow on the branches. The leaves make food from water and air. They make food when the sun shines. The food goes into the branches. It goes into the trunk and roots. It goes to every part of the tree. Fall comes and winter is near. The work of the leaves is over. The leaves turn yellow and brown. The leaves die and fall to the ground. Now the tree is bare. All winter it looks dead, but the tree is not dead. Under its coat of bark, the tree is alive. Spring comes again. Rain falls. The sun warms the earth. The tree blossoms and new leaves grow. As long as it lives, the apple tree grows. As long as it lives, the apple tree blossoms in the spring and apples grow on it. When do you like apple trees best? In the spring when they're covered with blossoms? In the summer when they're covered with leaves? In the winter when they are bare? Or in the fall when they're covered with apples? The end. I liked that book, did you? It taught us all about how a tree grows through the different seasons. Well, let's see if there's anything else in our story bag. Well, there is, but it's not a book. There's some paper, pencil, and some markers. I think we'll use these to write down all the signs of spring that we saw when we were outside. Can you help me remember what they were? I remember 6 different signs of spring that we saw. Let's see if we can draw them. If you have some paper and a pencil and some markers, you can draw with me too. All right, the first sign of spring we saw was we saw some buds on the trees. So let's see, we could draw a branch coming off of a tree. We don't have to draw the whole tree. And here are the buds. And do you remember we saw one that just had buds and one that had tiny leaves? So maybe we'll put some tiny leaves on here too. Now, so we can tell the difference. I'll make the buds sort of a yellowy brown. Same color as the branch. And I'll make the tiny leaves green. Oops, use this side. So that was number 1. We saw buds and tiny leaves. Actually, that's number 1, the buds. And number 2 was the tiny leaves. Number 3 Do you remember we saw a bird's nest? Now that was in a tree too. So we could draw the branch. And on the branch, in a nice safe spot, a bird made a nest. This is how I draw bird's nests. I just put some crisscrosses. And that's the bird's nest that we saw. We'll give it a little bit of color. There we go. I don't have a brown marker, but I have a brown crayon. Maybe we'll add a little brown to our bird's nest. And we'll color our branch brown too. So that was number 3, a bird's nest. Then number 4, we saw some leaves that were growing out of the ground in the garden. So there were some leaves that were coming up, and then there were some leaves and a flower. Do you remember we saw that white crocus? So let's use the green for the green leaves. And we can leave that part white because it was a white flower. Now 5. Do you remember that we saw some grass? There were 2 different kinds of grass. There was some new green grass. That was the sign of spring. There was some old yellow grass too from last year. Then there was some new green grass. So that was our number 5. And number 6 was something that we heard. We didn't actually see it. It was birds singing, but maybe we could draw a bird so we know what this means. Bird singing. We'll make his beak open wide. And these are music notes that shows that the bird was singing. What color should we do our bird? Maybe purple. We don't really have purple birds in Nova Scotia. We have purple finches, but they're not really purple. They're more of a reddish color. But I think he looks pretty purple. And we'll give him a yellow beak. Or her. Maybe this is the bird that built the nest in the tree. And a pretty blue eye. And she's singing a song. That was the signs of spring that we saw. We saw buds on the trees and little green leaves. We saw a bird's nest in a tree. We saw green leaves that were going to have flowers soon. And we saw a flower, a white crocus. We saw new green grass. And we heard birds singing. Well, that's everything for today, boys and girls. Do you remember what we learned today? We went outside and we found some signs of spring. And then we drew them. There were 6. And then, after that, we read, a tree is a plant. And we learned how an apple tree grows all through the seasons. You know, I have an apple tree in my backyard, but it's not time for it to have blossoms yet like the tree in the book. But when it is, I'll show you because it's really beautiful. Well, I hope you had fun. I'll see you next time.